My delusional boss, let's call him John, actually thought he owned me. He thought because I was young and desperate for a paycheck, he could force me to break federal laws, endanger lives, and skip my legally mandated breaks just to pad his bonus. He genuinely believed his little delivery empire was untouchable, but he didn't know I was keeping a log. He didn't know I had the labor board regulations memorized, and he definitely didn't expect that his entire net worth and the company's biggest client hinged on me delivering 3 specific packages by exactly 7:01 a.m. So when he screamed at me to keep driving while I was legally required to stop, I decided to do exactly what he asked. I followed the rules, strictly. Watch how this entitled tyrant instantly regret crossing a petty delivery driver, and how a single 30-minute lunch break served up a dish of instant karma that cost him millions. To understand the sheer magnitude of this revenge, you have to understand how I got roped into this nightmare. It wasn't just a job application. It was supposed to be a favor. My dad had been headhunted for a high-level position at a logistics firm. During the negotiations, my dad being the absolute legend that he has pulled a power move. He told the hiring manager, "I'll consider the offer, but only if you set my son up with a starter job. He's hardworking, he's saving for his heavy truck license, and he needs a foot in the door." The company agreed. Enter John. John was the middle manager for the delivery fleet. When I showed up for the interview, I was sweating. I had literally sprinted out of the shower, thrown on my best clothes, and raced there in 30 minutes flat. I needed this cash. My heavy truck course was going to cost me $3,600 money I didn't have. John played the role of the benevolent mentor perfectly. He sat behind his messy desk, smiling like a shark. "We love family referrals here," John said, leaning back. "Your dad is a great guy. We'll take care of you. I hear you need a month off later this year for your heavy license course." "No problem. We support education. Sign here." I signed. I felt relief washing over me. I thought I had hit the jackpot. But the mask slipped less than 10 minutes later. I had excused myself to use the restroom after signing my contract. As I was washing my hands, the door to the office area cracked open. I froze. I could hear John's voice, but the nice mentor tone was gone. It was replaced by a guttural, demonic screech. "I don't care what your excuse is," John was screaming at someone. "You are a screw-up. You are costing me money. If you mess up this route one more time, I will make sure you never drive in this city again." My stomach dropped. The vitriol in his voice wasn't just management. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. I dried my hands silently, my heart hammering against my ribs. I walked out hoping it was just a bad day. I was delusional. It wasn't a bad day. It was just Tuesday. The next morning, I met my trainer, a guy we'll call Mike. Mike looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. We were sitting in the cab of the delivery van, the smell of stale coffee and diesel fumes filling the air. "Watch out for John," Mike whispered, checking the mirrors as if the boss might jump out of them. "Everyone hates him. He's vindictive. He thinks this depot is his personal kingdom. Just keep your head down, kid." I nodded, trying to ignore the pit in my stomach. I told myself I could handle it. I just needed the money for my course. I just needed to survive a few months. But then the family deal fell apart. The catalyst for the war wasn't something I did. It was what my dad did. After looking over the contract for the senior position, my dad got a counteroffer from his current employer. A massive raise, better benefits, the works. He decided to stay put. He politely declined the offer from John's company. When John found out my dad wasn't joining the company, I became public enemy number 1. In John's twisted, entitled mind, I was no longer the son of a future executive. I was just a hostage he could punish for my father's rejection. It started with the paperwork. Every truck is legally required to have a manifesta document showing stops and protocols. My truck had nothing. When I politely knocked on John's door to ask for one, he exploded. "Are you incompetent?" John bellowed, spit flying across his desk. "Why are you bothering me with this? You should have checked the glove box." "I did check, John. It's empty," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Then figure it out. Stop wasting my time." I walked out shaking. But that was just the appetizer. The main course was my paycheck. A few weeks later, I checked my bank account. My heart stopped. The number was hundreds of dollars short. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had rent due. I had that $3,600 tuition bill looming over me. I marched into the payroll department, bypassing John entirely. The lady there looked confused. "Oh, John marked you down for fewer hours. He said you left early 3 times last week." "I have never left early," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Check the GPS logs." They checked. I was right. They issued the correction. But when John found out I had gone over his head to get the money I had earned, he declared total war. He called me into his office. The air was thick with tension. "You think you're smart," John sneered. "Going to payroll. You're on thin ice. And by the way, that leave you wanted for your truck course in November denied." "Excuse me?" I said, shocked. "We discussed this in the interview. I've already paid the non-refundable deposit. It's $3,600. You said it was fine." "I said you could postpone it." John lied, a smug grin plastering his face. "November is our busy season. If you take that leave, don't bother coming back." I felt a hot, prickly heat spread across my skin. This man was willing to cost me thousands of dollars just to satisfy a grudge against my father. I looked him dead in the eye. "Okay," I said. "I'll handle it." I walked out of that office with a new mission. I wasn't just going to work here. I was going to follow every single rule, every single protocol, and every single law to the letter. John wanted to play games with my livelihood, fine. I was about to play a game with his net worth. Here's where the karma begins to boil. In the EU where I live, truck driving laws aren't suggestions. They are ironclad. Specifically, there is a regulation that states if you start your shift at 1 a.m., you must take a mandatory 45-minute break or a split 30-minute break after 6 hours of work. That means at 7 o'clock a.m., the wheels stop turning. Period. John, of course, didn't care about the law. He routed our deliveries so tightly that we were usually sprinting to the last customer exactly at 7 o'clock a.m. For months, I had been skipping my break or delaying it to keep the peace, but not anymore. The company had just landed a whale client. This client represented roughly 50% of the branch's income. They were extremely strict. Deliveries must be completed by 7 a.m. sharp, or they would file a formal complaint. Too many complaints, and the contract is void. John sent out a system-wide text. "All drivers, no excuses, deliveries must be done by 7 a.m. or you're fired. We cannot lose this client." I looked at my route for the day. It was overloaded, impossible. Even if I sprinted, I would have 3 stops left when the clock struck 7. Perfect. I drove my route efficiently. I didn't drag my feet. I worked hard, but the volume was simply too high. At 6:58 a.m., I pulled up to the curb. I had 3 massive pallets of goods for the whale client in the back. I was 2 blocks away from their loading dock. 6:59 a.m. I turned off the engine. I pulled the key out of the ignition. 7 o'clock a.m. I reclined my seat, opened my lunchbox, and took a bite of my sandwich. My phone started ringing at 7:02 a.m. It was the client. I let it go to voicemail. I am legally on break. I am not allowed to perform work duties, which includes answering work calls. 7:05 a.m. John calls. Bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt. I ignored it. 7:10 a.m. John calls again, and again, and again. By 7:15 a.m., I had 11 missed calls and a string of text messages that looked like they were typed by a rabid animal. "Where are you? Answer the phone. The client is screaming at me." I calmly chewed my sandwich, watching the traffic go by. It was the most delicious sandwich I have ever tasted. Finally, at 7:30 a.m., my legal break ended. I put the key in the ignition and called John back. "What the hell are you doing?" John screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You are late. The client is furious." I was on my break, John, I said, my voice silky smooth. I don't care about your break. You finished the job. Actually, John, I interrupted, channeling my inner lawyer, under EU Regulation 561/2006, strictly monitored by the Family Court of Labor Disputes. Wait, sorry, that's just the Department of Transportation. I am legally required to stop. If I had driven those 2 blocks, I would have violated federal law. Are you instructing me to break the law on a recorded line? Silence. He knew I had him. Just deliver the package, he hissed. I did. I delivered it 35 minutes late. The client refused to sign for it. They sent it back. When I got back to the depot, John was waiting. He was purple. Give me your keys, he spat. You're done. Get out. Don't come back. With pleasure, I said. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I walked to my car knowing that the damage was already done. He thought firing me was the punishment. He didn't realize he had just fired the only guy who was actually keeping his chaotic root system afloat. The fallout was spectacular. It was better than any Golden Child drama I've ever read about. Because I left, and because John was in such a rage he forgot to cover my route for the next day. The whale client's deliveries were missed again. The news of my firing and the reason for it spread through the depot like wildfire. The other drivers, who were already sick of John's abuse and wage theft, realized that John would fire them for following the law too. Within 48 hours, 4 other drivers resigned on the spot. They cited unsafe working conditions and pressure to violate labor laws in their resignation letters. This is important because it flagged the company for an audit. The whale client. They didn't just complain, they pulled the contract. They cited unreliability and unprofessional management. That was 50% of the branch's revenue gone overnight. Update. It has been 6 months since I walked out of that hellhole. I successfully completed my course, which I didn't have to postpone thanks for asking John, and I now have my heavy truck license. I'm working for a long-haul company that pays double what John paid, with a boss who actually respects the law. As for John, I ran into an old colleague last week. Apparently after the client left and the drivers quit, corporate came down hard. They couldn't fulfill their remaining contracts. They had to sell off half the fleet just to pay the debts. The branch has been downsized significantly. John is still there, but he's no longer the manager. He was demoted to a dispatch role, meaning he has to sit in a cubicle and answer phones all day, while a new manager watches his every move. His net worth, or whatever he thought he had in social capital, is 0. The company reputation is trash. No one wants to work there. It's known locally as a sinkhole career. He tried to screw me over a few $100 in a lunch break. In return, I cost him his biggest client, his reputation, and his power. Moral of the story: if you want to exploit your workers, make sure they don't know the law better than you do. Because karma is a legally mandated 30-minute break, and it is best served cold.